Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Todd Scholl. I'm the lead learner at the SCEA's Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. Thank you so much for being here tonight to talk about a really important topic, teacher contracts. And we know, those of you who are educators know, around this time of year, we have those contracts coming in that for the next upcoming school year that we either need to sign or not. And there's a lot of sometimes confusion around contracts. So we're going to try to clear up some of that confusion tonight, talk about contracts, talk about what we'd like to see in contracts in the future. But we want to make sure before we dive in that everybody understands that we're not giving legal advice tonight. There's no lawyers on our call tonight. The SCEA members do have access to our help desk, and we've got highly qualified people who can answer specific questions about your contracts and legal questions. And that's one of the huge benefits of being a member of the South Carolina Education Association. If you are interested, if you are not currently a member, we'd like to invite you to be a member. You can look down at the bottom of the screen. There's a link there. It's jointhescea.org, or you can text the word join to 48744. We would love to have you. One of the many, many benefits of membership is having access to our help desk and being able to ask those specific questions about your situation. So without further ado, I want to bring in some folks who are going to help us learn more about contracts, help maybe answer some of your questions. If you are watching, please feel free to comment, say hello, and ask questions along the way. We'll do our best to bring those on and answer them if we can, or refer you to the help desk. So without further ado, Sherry East, the South Carolina Education Association president, and Kat Lowe, who is president of the Berkeley County Education Association. How are you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Having a great day.
Awesome. It is. It's a great day. Looking like the weather's going to start warming up, so I'm looking forward to that after a week of very much cooler temperatures than I'd hoped for. We have Jenny watching tonight. Jenny Kilch, I can't read that. Hi, how are you doing tonight? Thanks so much for everybody tuning in. Let's start off with some questions about contracts in general. Like, when is the deadline for educators in South Carolina to sign the contracts they receive?
I was say who. Usually it is May 10th or 11th,
Sherry,
depending on if it's a weekend or a business day. So May 10th would be your deadline to sign your contract for your following school year. So it's in May, second week of May.
Awesome. And my understanding, Sherry, and correct me if I'm sorry, Kat, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it's regardless of when you receive, like when you get your contract, you have until that May 10th deadline, right, Sherry?
Correct. There's been some confusion about that right now. We get a lot of calls, especially this time of year. Districts are giving out contracts early because they want to know their staffing situation. So there's nothing to prevent a district from offering you a contract early. So we have been hearing, especially from Berkeley County, and we saw last year a lot of districts were giving signing bonuses for you to sign it early. So there's nothing illegal about that. Like, a district can offer you an early contract and you can sign an early contract. But this is our caution. If you sign it, you are legally bound to work for that district come August. So if you are shopping around or looking, or you think you want to move to a neighboring district because they're opening a school, or you may have a different assignment over there, or you're just shopping, you're looking around, which a lot of people are doing right now, then we urge you to not sign your contract until you're ready. And because they are legally binding, and districts are not willing to let you out of a contract right now. And the repercussions of that are you can get a breach of contract and you may lose your license for a year. So, you need to take it serious. You need to read what's in your contract, and you need to wait until you have an offer from somewhere else, or let your folks know. But it doesn't matter if you let them know. Once you sign it, you sign it.
And the important point here is, no matter when they receive that contract, they can't be required to sign the contract until May 10th. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
You cannot be forced or made to do that.
Okay. What is the procedure to ask for a release from your contract?
Good question. We get that a lot. So let's just say, for whatever reason, you sign your contract in August and you've been offered a job where your husband gets transferred, or you have a sick family member that you cannot fill your obligations to your contract for whatever reason. Then you need to first start with your administrator, ask, to be released, or really go and then take it up to your HR director at your district level. Ask to be released from your contract. If they say no, then you should go to your school board, and you should go to your school board, give them the reasons, and ask for them to release you at the school district level from your contract. It's either a yes or a no. If they say no, then they will turn you into the state board, and then you are allowed to have a hearing. So at the hearing of the state board, you can plead your case to the state board. And at that point, you've probably left your job. I mean, you quit, and you would get what they call a breach of contract, which also has ramifications. There's a national clearinghouse, and the state can suspend your license for a year. The state board can make a decision about that too. So you're allowed to go have a hearing at the state board level. And if you're a member of the SCEA, we will guide you, walk you through it, go to the hearing with you, all of those good things that we offer for our membership to do. So if you are in that situation and you want to fight the breach of contract and you want to be released and keep it off your record, you should go to the state board and ask for a hearing, or you're allowed a hearing. And a lot of people don't know that. And a lot of people, we've seen numerous breach of contracts at the state board level. The disconnect there is local school boards will tell you as the educator, oh no, it's a requirement. We have to turn you in. We're not allowed to release you. But that's not true. A school board can release you from your contract, and it can all happen at the local level. You do not have to be turned into the state board. You do not have to get a breach of contract or a suspended license if your school board releases you.
Okay. Kat, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, from the side, just hearing that, I think anybody would hopefully take some caution. It is a daunting thing to have to decide whether or not you're going to break that contract. And for us, there's a lot of things that we don't have assurances on or knowledge of, even if you wait until that May 10th deadline. So things we are pretty sure we won't know. We won't know exactly how much money we make, right? Those salary announcements usually happen later. On your contract, most likely you'll have a statement called your assignment, and that's your school, but your contract is with the district. So most districts, and I have yet to see one that's different. So I do want to say the majority that I am aware of basically let it be known in the contract that they can move you schools. Like they can move you anywhere they need you. And if that should happen, that triggers that whole cascade of things that Sherry just talked about. And it's those lack of assurances, I think, that should really give people caution when they're looking at the type of contract that we have.
Yeah. Someone wrote from Berkeley County that we don't even know our pay. And I know this is an issue that is on our radar of wanting. I think a lot of maybe people outside of the education world don't realize that folks are signing a contract for the upcoming year and don't even know what their pay is going to be because the pay scales may not have been released yet. So they're signing something where they don't even know what the compensation is going to be. Can you talk about how we can advocate effectively to change that, Sherry?
Well, that's one of the things that we are talking about. And actually, Representative Ray Felder has put in a bill. It hasn't made it to a hearing yet, that a teacher would have 10 days until the the salary schedule is announced, then a teacher could decide, have a 10-day grace period after the salary schedule is announced, whether they want to stay or move to a different district or quit teaching altogether. So we have really had some positive conversations with our legislators. They absolutely, Kat was right, are unaware of what we sign. When you show them your contract, they're like, what? You sign this? And so it's a one-page document. It's very top heavy to the district. In my contract in Rock Hill, most of them have about the same language, but it also not only says we don't know what we're going to pay you, but should the state cut our funding or we can't pay you at the level we are, you agree to be furloughed or you take less pay. So we also sign, part of it says that. The other part that gets real tricky that we sign in Rock Hill, it just says you're assigned to Rock Hill School District. Sometimes, I mean, they can move you around. And in a place, Rock Hill was a city, it wouldn't be hard to drive across town. But if you're in a district such as Spartanburg or Charleston, you could get assigned and potentially have to drive an hour, hour and a half to get to a new work site location. That would be detrimental on someone's budget to drive, your time, your childcare. So all of these things should take into effect if a district should decide to move you. And sometimes that happens. We're not saying districts do this on purpose. Sometimes, the allotment of children needs a first grade teacher here. We've seen teachers move the first week of school. But again, when a district changes you like that, you should have some leeway to remove yourself from driving an hour and a half down the county to going to a neighboring district to teach. You're still teaching in the state of South Carolina. You're still providing services for children, but you're locked into that district. And like Kat mentioned, you can be assigned anywhere, anytime, due to whatever the district wants. So that's one of the things we would like to see, a grace period around that. The pay, your scheduling, there are lots of different things. And the other duties as assigned, I've heard of teachers being assigned to put on a drama performance. Like, okay, you teach English, but we need a play this year, so we're going to assign you to do the school play. What? I wouldn't know how to do a school play. So we've seen things like that where it says other duties as assigned, that is open to lots of interpretation that we would like that language removed.
Yeah, I mean, in
Kat,
the
have
end,
you seen examples of that where? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, about 4 years ago, I was, the other thing that the contract has, all the contracts have, is like a day count of how many days we need to be at school, and that seems pretty straightforward. Ours for regular teachers, 190 days, right? 180 days instruction, 10 days of professional development. But what that contract really doesn't talk about is the work, because we're not working 190 days. We are working significantly more than that, whether it be the hours before or after work, Saturday, Sundays, and summers. That work ends up being kind of the work that everybody reports as being, I'm overworked, I'm overloaded, and really what it comes down to is that contract is basically saying we're compensated for 190 days, but it's not 190 days of work, So like I said, about 4 years ago, I ran a little survey. We had about 1,300 teachers from around the state figure out about how many days outside of that contract that people are working, and it came out to be about 40 days. Now, this was before COVID, and I think just people kind of going through that exercise of figuring out how many extra days you really are working outside of our 190 instructional got to be at the school days. And that's embedded in the contract, And so when we talk to people, they usually say things like, summer's off, you get all this time off. But in the end, our contract doesn't reflect the workload. And that's a problem, I don't know exactly how we go about solving that. I know that people are, that's something else that obviously needs to be talked about. But just like Sherry was saying, it's just like the level of uncertainty that you walk into in August. You don't know what classes you're going to be teaching. You might not even be in the same classroom. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard teachers having to move classrooms, in like a day or two. And like the worst one is like she was saying, it's like you could just get moved to another school and you don't have any agency to do anything for yourself, because if you decide that you've had enough, now you're in breach of contract.
Right. It feels like the other duties. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No.
Good.
Well, one thing she mentioned, I think we need to make folks aware of too, is we are so giving of our time as teachers. And so when they ask you to do that Saturday workshop, or they ask you or / require you to do a week in the summer or 3-day training, or, we have to push back on that and ask. And this is what got me in my district. Sometimes I would say, well, how are you going to compensate me for that? Am I being paid to come in the summer and write curriculum, or am I being paid to come in and look at EOC test scores? And then it's like, well, what do you mean pay you? I'm like, well, if you're going to require me to work past my 190 days, you by law have to pay me. So I think we as educators need to start, it's one thing if you're home Sunday night grading papers, that's we can argue, did you have to do that at home or did you not? Yes, I think you do, but I can't argue that you have to be paid for that. But if you are being asked / required to come in over your 190 days of work, you have to be paid for that. And so you need to fill out a timesheet. You need to be compensated for that. And it's illegal if they don't compensate you for it. Now, it's insubordination if you don't show up. You need to show up, but we need to be brave, and we need to go in and ask and say, you required me to be here on Saturday to decorate for the prom, or you required me to show up and work the prom Saturday for 2 hours. I need to be compensated for my 2 hours. And when everybody at that school turns in a timesheet for working the prom, then you should go. Now, the big difference there is, were you voluntarily working the prom or were you required to go? So if there's anything over your 190 days, you have to be paid. Reminder, you have to be paid for that. So you need to ask for that. And we need to be better about, requesting that payment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think in the end, the first thing you really want to say to yourself is like, take a look at that contract, take a look at that 190 days, and kind of audit yourself as to like how you've been parsing up your own time, right? Like Sherry was saying, like, every once in a while, like a Sunday, we're going to end up doing grading or planning. But I would also say in our shortage, we are seeing a lot of teachers, a lot of special ed teachers for sure, getting so much of a case workload. The only place that you can complete that work in a timely manner means that you are taking home work, right? Which the district should be very serious about, to understand that like that's well beyond what we've agreed to when we say 190 days, right? So
it feels like the other duties is assigned is this sort of catchphrase that allows then for exploitation to take place from place to place. And we certainly would hope that districts would not do that. But we hear from teachers all over that that is often used as a sort of an excuse to sort of pressure them into doing things beyond contracted hours. And I think it's really important for teachers to understand, well, that's one of the reasons why it's so important to be a part of a union at the SCEA, so that you can call us and get backing and get support to understand exactly where your rights start and end, so that if it's possible for you to push back, that you can. Trying to do it solo and on your own, to me, is a recipe for some confusion and making some mistakes in that realm, either allowing yourself to be exploited or pushing back when you really just don't have a foot to stand on.
Yeah, if anything, I would say, like, and Sherry is always so gracious with her time, but probably the very first times I've ever got to talk to Sherry, we were meeting Bernie Sanders. It was like 2019, and it was like all the presidential guys were coming down, and Bernie gave me 2 seconds, and as people know me, I was like, "Do you want to see a teacher contract?" And he was like, "No." And I was like, I think he thought I was going to pull out a binder, but I just unfolded our one piece of paper. And I remember hearing Sherry behind me saying, like, and this is why we need the union. And it is like you can go out there and you can try and do it by yourself. I was trying to do it by myself for a long time. And absolutely everything, all the tools and help that I've gotten from the SCEA makes me feel like we're gonna change this contract. We're gonna have it better reflect what we need to have to attract and retain our teacher workforce. So it is very much being a part of this union.
We some of the stories that I've heard when I started out as the president, I was like, why do we have a shortage? Why are people leaving the classroom? What's happening here? And so I heard stories. The main thing I heard from elementary teachers was their time. Their time wasn't being valued. It wasn't being respected. They didn't even have time to go to the restroom and take care of personal needs. But one of the stories that stuck with me, and I used to carry around a box of Betty Crocker with me, and I still have it, in the new office, is she was calling me about something else, but she said, I have to go now because I have to go bake my required cupcakes. And I said, what are you talking about? You can't be required to bake cupcakes. Like, that's not part of your job. You're a teacher. You teach children. Like, that's not an academic duty of your, it's not grading papers. That's not parent night. That's baking. And so she said, Sherry, no, I'm required to do this. And I probed some more. I'm like, is this part of a fundraiser? Is this a fall festival? Is this, why are you doing this? And so she said, well, we're required to bake cupcakes 3 or 4 times a year. We have to turn it in. And I said, can you send me that in writing? Like, can you send me the directive that was given to you to bake cupcakes? And she did. And not only on that email was it the cupcakes, it was the kind of cake mix to buy. And it was all the other things about baking cupcakes. And I said, are you reimbursed any money for this? Like, are you given any money to buy the eggs and the oil and
right.
she's like, no, Sherry, no. Like, so she could understand why I was so upset about the cupcakes, because she had called me about something else. And she finally said to me, Sherry, I didn't call you about cupcakes. I called you about some other problem. I said, ma'am, the problem is the cupcakes. If your administrator feels like she can require you to make cupcakes on your own time with your own money for no compensation, that is the root of our problem here. And so I told that story
Yes.
to people running for governor. I told them, and they came up with, one of them was Mandy Norell Powers. And she said, Sherry, it's because we're women. She said, I dare you that they would have not walked into a room of male engineers and told them they were required to bake cupcakes 4 times a year. It wouldn't have happened. And so she equated it to that we are primarily a workforce of women, and people see us as bakers and mothers, and that we will just do whatever we need to do. And so that is also some things that have to stop. Like, we have to be able to say, no, I'm a teacher, I'm an educated professional, and part of my job is not to bake cupcakes. But we have to learn to say no to that, or we have to know to call the SCEA for that. Like Sherry, when she called, and again, she didn't even think that was a legal issue, because the principal could back and say, well, that's other duties as assigned. I needed some cupcakes, so I asked her to do it. I don't think that would hold up, and that would not work out if it went to court. I mean, that is not an academic thing that you should be made to do. Along with the other things I heard were working athletic gates, going and handling money. I mean, a lot of teachers didn't feel comfortable handling money at an athletic gate, sometimes where it's not safe. There's a lot of money sometimes in those cash drawers at athletic gates. We heard from one lady who she had a husband with dementia. Not only did she have to go work a soccer gate, she had to pay someone to sit with her husband while she went and worked the soccer gate. And I said, ma'am, please let me take this on, because you shouldn't have to do that. And she's like, no, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want anybody to know I'm complaining. I'm like, ma'am, this is why you're going to quit your job, is because you not only have taught middle school all day, now you have to go work the soccer gate,
Right.
Just because that's your requirement. So those are the kind of stories that we heard from elementary, middle, high school people. It was mainly discipline. It was disrespect with verbal and physical assaults, that there was no support for those kind of things that went on. And your contract could protect you. And one of the things that we've heard from many teachers is, it's hard to legislate respect. Well, make me a contract that shows me you respect me. Give me a contract that shows me I'm compensated for my work and my expertise. Give me a contract that protects my time and professionalism, and give me a contract that tells me what I'm doing every year. Or let me get out of it without breaching me in a national database and suspending my license for a year. I mean, what, or let me buy it out. I did speak to some other states. I'm like, what do you do? Some of them do have buyouts, just like in sports, like you can buy out your contract. So I was wondering if we have any listeners on here, how would you feel about buying out your contract? For $500, we'll let you move to a different district. Or would other districts buy your contract? Yeah, we need a special ed teacher over here. We'll pay $2,000. So Yeah, a lot of change could happen with this contract. And we're hearing. I mean,
Yeah, I have yet to come across, like I gave every legislator I saw during our lobby day my contract. Like I just print it up and I give it away. Like I'm Oprah and it's like you get a car, you get a car. But in the end, not a single legislator told me like this looks like a good contract. I would sign it, you know. Um, and they look at it and they are just absolutely confused why we sign it. Like why are we signing it? And you have to explain to them like, well, we have to. I mean, it's a contract of adhesion. It's like, just like how you use your iTunes. You don't get to change the agreement. It's just a yes or a no. You're going to do it or you're not. And I think that teachers have shown an enormous amount of faith for their schools and their districts signing a contract like that blind. And I would think at minimum, the district and those schools can reciprocate and be a little bit more level and transparent about what the expectations are. So, like Sherry's saying, is like we should know up front at the beginning of the school year, what things need to be accomplished that are going to be these other duties and defined as such and just left there, as opposed to constantly being told later like, oh, now we need this, we need somebody to do this. And I feel bad for the schools and I do feel bad for the district on some frame because I know that they're scrambling because the shortage is real. But if we don't start respecting teachers now and the work that they're doing now, I don't know how we end this shortage, right? So
Right.
We're going to have to do a lot of things on a lot of different levels. It's going to have to be a scatter shot. And to me, this contract they can do simple changes on it that would just be simple transparency, like a definition of what benefits are state benefits and what benefits are our district benefits. I spent a large amount of time last year explaining to my colleagues that we did not get paid parental leave because we are not state workers, right? We didn't get that. And there's confusion in that, right? And so, when they announced that all state workers were going to get this big raise, I was like, well, we're not state workers, we're district workers. We're going to have to figure out what the districts are going to do for us, and it's this confusion that happens. It's like a muddied kind of approach to try and figure out who's in charge of what with us. And so all they'd have to do is define transparently who's in charge of what. And that's free. And they could just put it on the contract. It would take no extra effort on their part. And I think that those moves are simple moves that they can make immediately. The other thing I think would be very fair is I do think that the district has to plan ahead and make their bets on us and tell us what school we're going to be at and what we're going to teach. Before we leave, and when they change those things around, it actually changes the amount of work people have to do. Like, imagine if you're a third grade teacher and you find out sometime during the summer, like, you know what, you're teaching fourth grade now. Well, all your stuff's third grade. So now that 190 days of work that you're going to have to do is going to be that, plus figuring out what you're supposed to do for fourth grade. So when we don't take into consideration what is happening on the ground for the teachers when these change-ups happen, and giving them some sort of compensation, whether that's like a comp time or actual compensation or just letting them say no. If we can't have one of those three, what kind of job is this? I mean, it's no job that's professional.
That's it.
And I think there is. I think there's I think Sherry made a point earlier that I think is really important for us to emphasize, and that is, I do think there is an element of patriarchy here that exists within the system because it is a 75% or so female profession. And I think what happens is, we get into we get into the profession because we really love kids and we care about kids, but that love and care sometimes is exploited, and we're told, well, we're doing this for the kids. You know, you make those cupcakes. This is about the kids. You need to be a team player. And there's an element of gaslighting that takes place with educators where they feel like, well, if I don't do this, maybe I'm hurting the kids, or I'm not helping my team, and somebody else is going to have to pick up the slack. And it creates a whole psychological framework where if you say no, then you're the outlier, the complainer, the one who's causing trouble, the one who's not being polite and friendly or cooperative. And what we have to do is really encourage educators to not accept that framework and not accept that type of gaslighting, to be able to set boundaries and limits that are reasonable, and to set expectations in return. But it's helpful if that's done collectively, so that you're not the only one in the building who's saying no and setting boundaries, that you have a group of people. And this is why we're encouraging people to join the SCEA, because then you're not alone. You can have other folks in your building, and you guys can get together to decide on what the collective action is going to be around these issues, so that you're not doing it in isolation, so that you have that sort of sense of encouragement and safety, that you've got a group of people that are there to have your back. And then you've got the SCEA, the entire SCEA behind you, and our legal team that you can ask for advice on these particular matters that come up. But it's we've got to, as a profession, if we don't do this, like you said, Todd Jake mentioned 9,200 departures this year. And Kat, you referred to it as well. Just more and more teachers are going to leave the profession. Instead of quitting, let's get together and say no and set boundaries and reclaim our profession and demand the respect that we deserve. Sherry, I interrupted you.
Yeah.
Please feel free to share what your thoughts were.
Yeah, those are perfect things. I just a couple notes that there is a confusion of when we're a state worker and when we're not a state worker. So we are a state worker because we have state health insurance and a retirement plan, but you are technically a local employee because you are employed by a local school district. So that's good for us in a lot of ways, because your contract can be a local thing. Your local school board has the right and power to do a lot of the things that we've talked about. They do not have to be legislated out of Columbia, which is a much harder lift. You can, but we don't have enough people that know how to go about going to your local school board and asking for these certain things. So we need to do better about that as well. And one thing that we hear a lot of is about your work days. I was never so aggravated when some folks called me from a district and said, Sherry, our grades are due before the work day. I was like, what? Why would you have exams? So this is a high school problem. High school people give exams, and then they have to grade them, and then they have to do their grades and do the average. But they weren't given but the work day fell after when the grades were due. And that's just a common sense thing. Like, why would you have exams and have the grades due before you gave the teachers their work day? Isn't that just a planning situation? You give an exam, you grade it, you need time as a high school teacher to get those grades put in the computer. So that was just poor planning on somebody's part, but that's something that could be handled at a school site too. Like, hey, look, did you realize you got our grades due at 4:00 on Wednesday when we gave our last exam at 3:00 Wednesday? There was not enough time. There was not a 24-hour period in between when my grades were due and when I gave an exam. That's just very poor planning on somebody's part. But we as teachers need to feel strong and brave enough to go to an administrator and say, hey, look, did you realize I just gave an exam 45 minutes ago and I can't possibly get these graded and in the computer in the time frame you have set up? But you see these dates in August. You kind of know when your work day versus grades are due. That's usually given to you up front. We need to do a better job of looking at that before, oh, grades are due tomorrow? What do you mean? I haven't had time to grade my exams. Those are little things that we can help you with that doesn't involve calling a legislator about. I mean, that should be something that if we have worksite reps, so this is going on at a particular school, and we know we have an SCA representative at that school, which is we're really trying to push to make sure we have representation at every school of that one person that you know. And I know Kat's that girl. Like, if you have a problem, you're going to call Kat. If it was in Rock Hill, you're going to call Sherry. You're going to call, you have people around the state that will go ask the hard questions, because it is scary. You don't want retaliation. You don't want to be labeled as oh my gosh, why is she coming in here? But I think we as educators have to do a better job of saying, hey, this just isn't right. And let me come to you and see if we can figure this out. So that's one of the other things. And another thing Kat mentioned was salaries. Like, why don't we know our salaries? A lot of people are like, why can't they tell us what we're going to make? How are we getting a raise? Are we not getting a raise? And all that is contingent on the state budget, which the state budget, the House has sent something over to the Senate. It's the end of March. The Senate hasn't even looked at the budget yet. So districts need to be able to either plan ahead with their money, kind of get a feel for what they're going to get, because sometimes the budget is not decided until after we start school. Mm-hmm. So that is a real problem. I'm not sure, because all that is also dependent on when the state gets their revenue in, when they know how much surplus they have or how much income is in our state. So all of that is a bigger picture. That's something that not the district, and the district has some leeway in that and some not. So we could kind of figure out yes or no, you're going to get that raise. But the other part of this raise situation, if you're watching or following the state budget right now, they're saying, oh, teachers are going to get a $2,500 raise. Well, that's deceptive, because you're not going to do that unless you're in one of the districts. They're going to try to bring the starting pay up to $42,500. So, but if you're in a district that is paying the minimum, which is $40,000, which were only 8 districts last year, you may or may not see a $2,500 raise. So, the devil's in the details in this. They are trying to up it, but if you're in a district like Greenville, you're probably already close to 42 or above that. So you may not see anything unless the local figures out how to fund that raise. So it gets kind of complicated with this funding formula, with everything that's going on down here. So I just want to be mindful that when you hear they're proposing a $2,500 raise, that is not for everyone. And then I really don't like how people are kind of pitting the firefighters against the policemen. Like, the policemen are getting a huge raise. Well, they deserve it. And so do the firemen, and so do the teachers. So I don't want us to get in a habit of like, why did the police get a raise and the teachers didn't? Or why did the firefighters get a raise and they didn't? They also have shortages as well. I've talked to the firefighters association. They have about, I think, a 10 to 20% ratio shortage. And I think the police are like a 30% vacancy rate with them. So, let's not, we've all got troubles. We're all state workers. We all need to pull together and make sure the state is taking care of the people that take care of them. And that includes the teachers, the educators, the firefighters, and the police. So our state has it sitting on a surplus, sitting on money that unprecedented, we're doing great. Why can't we invest it in those 3 groups of people that work in our state to take care of our needs? So that's one thing I think we need to be mindful of, is how the budget works and how you put in a request to get money into your district and into your school. The other thing we hear from legislators is that you as educators need to go ask is, when we ask for money, they'll say, oh, well, your districts are sitting on so much reserve funds. Well, sure, they could give you a raise if they wanted to. They just don't want to. They want to keep that money in the bank. So you need to ask your district sometimes, how much money is in reserves for your district, how much needs to be in reserves, and why couldn't we use that money for teacher raises? And why aren't you? And just ask your district. They may have a good reason for that. They may not. But that would go with your contract and pay.
I think in the end, what we really need to see is we need to see us in the actual conversation about what it means to figure out what the pay is going to be, right? I mean, if we don't know, all the way up until summertime, and our deadline to sign is May 10th, we should, in our districts, be hearing conversations about what they think the pay is going to be. So I think that this is a difference between like accuracy and precision, right? Accuracy is going to tell me within a window of, $2,000 or so of what you think you're going to be able to do. Precision is like, I understand you're not going to be able to tell me to the penny, right? And if we're not at least having those conversations of what we are accurately going to be paid. And we've seen where that can be successful. And in Charleston County right now, they've got a lot of conversations happening directly with teachers and their HR discussing what they need to see as compensation. Now, what comes out of that conversation, I don't know, but I think that that is the right direction that all the districts need to be taking, where they're having honest, sincere, and very real conversations about pay, right? As opposed to just asking us to wait, and then, okay, now sign your contract, and then you guys get to find out later. Like, this should be an ongoing conversation of understanding that, of course, the district isn't going to know exactly what they're going to be able to do, but they should have a strategy of what they think they need to get accomplished here, and where everything falls, we fall with it. So we need to be a part of that conversation too.
Yeah. I wish the legislatures would. I hope that they understand that Buc-ee's car wash managers make $125,000 per year. That's the starting salary. You can go check that out. A car wash manager at Buc-ee's is making 3 times the minimum salary that they're suggesting for educators. People preparing the next generation of South Carolinians are going to start off at a third of the salary of a car wash manager. And this goes back. So someone made the point I forgot who it was. Someone made the comment that, what you spend money on is what you value, and they're showing what they value with these salaries. And like Sherry's saying, when you only say you're going to raise the minimum to $2,500, if the district's already above that minimum, then it's not really a raise. And it does. And Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm like in year 20, I'm not necessarily going to see an actual $2,500 raise just because you've made the minimum higher, correct?
The way it was explained is that every cell in the pay schedule would get the $2,500, but only if you're at the starting pay. Remember that. So that's last year when they did that and raised it $4,000. We were all excited and jumping up and down. Oh, we're getting $4,000. Only 8 districts got $4,000. So those districts, I don't know who was between 40 and 42, but you are correct that the state, here's another kicker for you. The state only funds a step increase up to year 23. So anything above year 23 is never funded by the state. So if you are in a district that pays you a step increase after year 23, then your district has figured out a way to fund that locally, because the state is not reimbursing your district for any of that. So and it's all over the place. I ran the numbers on this last year. Some districts, and there seemed to be no rhyme or reason to it either, because my district, Rock Hill, which is considered a resource district, they stop at year 25. Right. So in my district, my last 2 or 3 years, I did not see a step increase at all. And so, I've worked 2 or 3 jobs. Advanced Auto Parts, I have to have them credit, 23 years there. So I would not see a raise anymore in Rock Hill until I retired. So my step wages were stagnant there unless the state put in the money to do a percentage. So yes, so that is another thing we're trying to get changed, is to actually up the step increase allotment from the state to go past 23 years. Because you got a lot of years left. You've got 5 more to even retire. Right. So we've seen places like Jasper only does till 23. Beaufort goes to 31. So you see teachers in Jasper that would want to move over to Beaufort because they're padding their retirement. For one, it affects you day to day, but it's also going to impact your retirement money that you're going to bring home the last 7 years in a different district that's going to at least give you a step increase until year 30. So that is something else that's going on. And I don't know who I did this with the other day, but we figured out how much teachers make a day and hourly, because you got to remember you're doing 190 plus all your other stuff, but 190 gives teachers 6.5 or 7.5 hour day is about $210 a day. And so that ended up being $29.86 an hour is the way I had it figured out. And some people look at it that way, and when they're looking at it that way, they're like, oh, well, that's plenty of money. Like, teachers are making $29 an hour. That's doable. But when you look at other professionals with the same amount of degrees, It's not, so it's not. So we get bogged down in the business world of the 190 days divided by your salary. When the business community looks at that, they're fixed to this was we need to add more days to your contract. Then if you want to make more money, you need to work more days. And so,
well, and that takes it back, Sherry, like I was saying before, is like when we're looking at these contracts, at no point in time does any district have to audit themselves to say, like, we are only giving you duties and other things and such that it is in 190 days. Now, I think that everybody would agree, like, plus or minus a few. But literally, when I ran that survey, over 80% of the respondents said they did 20 days or more. Now, 20 days, that's a whole month. And on top of that, half those people were doing a second job. So if we're not focused on asking the question again and again, like what helps attract and retain, because here we've gone through a couple years of cycling where, McMaster and other legislators are pointing out that they've been giving us raises. Well, they've been giving us raises and we're still losing people. So what is the question? The question is, what do we need to do to attract and retain? And we need to hold ourselves to that measurement, as opposed to constantly patting ourselves on the back saying, like, oh, we gave teachers a little bit of this or a little bit of that. Because this is, to me, like a positive feedback loop. Like every year it's pushing itself even harder to have fewer and fewer of these people. And now we're in situations like where we have schools that have, teachers missing and everybody's picking up the slack, and you start getting that feeling like, am I going to be the last man on this ship? Do I need to jump ship now? There is not a person at a school that I do not bump into that if I ask them, like, are you going to be here next year? It's, it's yes or no. And then if it's yes, it's like, yeah, I think I'll be here maybe this many years. Like a deadline, like they're ready to jump. And I think we just need to be deadly serious about this, because it's easy to say that the problem is small now. But if we say that the problem is small now and the things that we are doing or trying to do is not changing that small, it's going to get bigger and bigger, and it's going to cost more, and we're going to have to do more to fix it. So like I said, when we look at this contract, I feel like there's a lot here that they could just readily do to give assurances to teachers, and that costs $0, but it does take front-end planning by the districts to do it. But they need to start deciding, like, when are they going to try and solve these problems? And it does. I cannot tell you, like, if you've never done it before, for the teachers that are out there, print up your contract and hand it to somebody who loves you and cares about you. And they're going to look at that contract and they're going to be sorry for you. They're going to be devastated for you, because they know how much you put into your job, and that contract is not a reflection of the respect, of the professionalism, of just the awesome hard work that these people are doing. It's for me, that's what it comes down to. Is if we're not even willing to talk about those types of things, like what is the real plan?
And I just want to remind everybody watching, the best way that we can create change around this is coming together in the union. And the SCEA is the only professional association that's going to help you organize, because this is what it takes. We have UNISERV directors in each region of the state. We've got field staff that can help you organize at the local level, like Kat has down in Berkeley. We can help you organize at the local level, and then Sherry's guiding us, helping us to organize at the state level. And then, of course, when you join us, you're a member of the NEA, organizing at the national level. And it requires us as educators to really look at all three levels, because all three levels have impact on what happens to us, on policy, on contracts, on salaries, everything. You can't just look at one of those levels. It's all three. And that's why, and we're the only association that when you join, you're joining at those three levels. Sherry?
I would say thank you for the lead into that, is that we are member driven. And Kat, when I first met her, was at the State House. And I think we walked to our car together, and her passion has always been contracts. And so as a member that is important to her, we take that on. We have a legislative committee. So we can only do, a union is only as strong as its membership. Like a union is you and me. It's not an outside factor that comes in. I mean, I am one person, but me and Kat and some other people around contracts have gotten some movement on this contract because that is a member issue that a member brought forward. It's always been an issue for me, but no one else ever said it to me. Like, what do people call me about? Contracts. They call me about time. They call me about, behaviors. They call me about all kinds of things. So when enough people call you about something, then we can form a committee about it and we can get it on the radar of the policymakers that can make change. So that's what we're doing with the contracts. I've always said we're stronger together. And I think in South Carolina, I've really had to fight that. It's hard to teach solidarity, and this me over we is what I found, especially with the duty-free lunch. It was very disheartening, I would say. The high school and middle school teachers, they didn't embrace the duty-free time because they already had it. And so they were like, well, sure, I already have planning. I don't need to worry about this. I'm like, but your sister teacher down here in the elementary school can't go to the bathroom during the day. Don't you agree that that's wrong? Well, sure, that's wrong. Well, I need you to get on board with that for them. And then I need elementary people to get on board with grades being due, after one day of a work day. Because elementary people, they don't care when they have the work day because they're not doing grades like us. So, we have to all buy into each other's issues and problems, and we have to pull together as the elementary teacher, the middle school teacher, the high school teacher, and we have to become the we, and you'll hear us talk a lot about the collective. The we can get things done. Kat on her own with this contract thing was spinning her wheels, but Kat with 10 or 15 other people across the state that feel the same way, they're willing to take that contract and show it to their legislator, and we're getting some movement on the contract thing. So we have to all, member driven. We heard from a lot of special ed teachers last year. They're facing their own issues. So we formed a special ed committee. Like, hey, special ed teachers, you're going to Zoom on these nights. Let's figure out what we can do to help you guys. So that is the beauty of the SCEA, is hearing your stories, hearing your issues, and actually trying to get them fixed and doing something about them. And having a great legal team behind us is always helpful too. I will say we do have great legal services available for folks. We hope you never need them, but they are there. But one other thing I wanted to bring up that people called about a lot, that Kat mentioned and you've mentioned, it's the 28 and done mindset right now. If I can just make it to my year 28. And someone said the only two people that count down days are people in prison. Like that, when my get out date is prisoners. Yeah. So isn't that horrible that teachers are counting down the day when they can retire, and they can tell you to the day and the minute when they can leave this profession, and it's horrible. So teachers have often called. We have a lot of calls about this. I want to make sure I just popped into my mind, is about buying out your years. And so we'll get a lot of calls and say, well, Sherry, I have 27. How much would it cost me to buy 1 year? Because I can't take it another year. Like, I cannot do this another 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So we send them over to PBA. There's a calculation on that. But a lot of people don't realize, I wish I knew when I was a young teacher that I could have bought a year for $2,000. But the older you get in the profession, the more it costs you to buy a year. But some people we've heard are buying out their contract. They're buying out their retirement or their time because they just can't deal with it anymore. So if you're within that probably 5-year window of retirement, that is something you can check into. I mean, we don't want to lose you in the profession, but that is something, a real thing that when you get too many calls about that, that's a problem. But it's called buying out your years. And in the state retirement system, you can do that. Now, it's pretty expensive. So, but, it's an option. I mean, that would be an option versus just walking away from your retirement or just getting less. So check into that. May be worth your time.
And just piggybacking off of what Sherry says, I know that there are a lot of teachers out there that may be, like in that countdown of like 2-3 years or whatever. But at that moment, even when you think you really just want to check out, I cannot press enough that it's actually time to check in. Because if you can be a part of something like this, like some of the things that we're trying to make happen for contracts, for pay, for all of it, like there is a kid out there that's just a kid that's going to be in your classroom and they're going to be the teacher, right? You're going to leave your classroom and somebody else is going to come in. And that's going to be somebody else's kid that's been through all of this, right? And we want to make that situation for that young teacher, for that new teacher, better, or you want to feel like you've done everything you could to make that classroom ready for them. So like if you are having like your Angela Bassett moment where you're shoving things in the car and you're going to light it on fire and walk out with a cigarette, all I'm going to say is like, I hear you, I feel you, but let's make that classroom better than how you were when it was there. And I know that that's kind of tough because you're kind of asking people that they have gone through the gauntlet, they have done all the work, but we just need a little bit more, and we need to have a little bit more, and we need it a little bit more all together now. And it's that all together that we really need to have, because you hear Sherry talking about people calling in as individuals. And that's what we hear from legislators to district people. They'll just be like, "Oh, well, Kat, that's just your thing," or you're not talking for all the teachers. And we really need to. I don't want to say like we need to let everyone focus on the idea that like we are a collective, like we are actually all talking together, and we need to show that collective. So yeah. I'm hopeful, but it's going to take all of us.
100%. And I think Sherry's used the word solidarity. And this is a word we need to really emphasize, because you may be working in a district where things are fine, where you feel like you're compensated well, that you're treated well. And to sort of close your doors and say, well, what happens in other districts around the state isn't really my concern. And we as educators have got to stop that. We've got to understand that what happens elsewhere in the state is actually really important, because if it can happen there, if exploitation of teachers and disrespecting teachers happens in another district and they get away with it, it's not going to be too long before it's at your doorstep. And so we have to make ourselves concerned with what every educator is experiencing, what every bus driver, custodial worker, cafeteria worker is experiencing in this state. And we've got to come together. We've got to lock arms and make sure that everybody is treated with the dignity and respect that they deserve. And when they are fighting to establish boundaries and fighting for that respect, that we don't abandon them, that we stand side by side with them. Solidarity is, and that is in a union.
Well, I would say this, like I've been talking to a lot of teachers. I'm like, hey, when you sign your contract, what do you think? And they're like, oh, I just don't want to forget to sign it. I just need to click on it. And I think right now is a good time to wait. You get that email, print it up. Like I said, share it with somebody that cares about you, right? You have until May 10th. I promise you. They will not let you forget. They will make sure you know that you have signed it or not. You will not forget. Sometimes the teachers are the best students and their own worst enemy because of it. Because if you're not getting incentivized to sign it early, take the time and understand what you are signing before you sign it. And for us, it's going to be a click. It's not going to be a signature. So print it up, read through it, hand it to somebody who loves you, right? And make sure you know what you're getting into.
All right. Well, thank you guys for being here tonight. Share your thoughts.
I would say your contract is a legally binding document. So when you sign it, your district does not have to release you to go to the neighboring district. Or if your mother or father is sick, they do not have to release you. So please think twice. Make sure that you want to work for the district that you're signing that contract. Give us some thought. And if you have any questions whatsoever, we are with you. You know how to get a hold of us. Check us out online. And thank you to Kat for all the work she has done around contracts. And it's an important issue. And we're glad to have Kat on team, the SCEA.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kat, the Berkeley County Education Association president, Sherry East, the SCEA president. Thank you both for your time and your wisdom and sharing your thoughts tonight and trying to get folks to get fired up and organized so that we can hopefully improve the contracts that our educators are signing. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Can we just say a big shout out to Todd for hosting us tonight and doing our cool center. That's nice to have that.
It's my honor and pleasure. Thank you. All right, that's Sherry East and Kat Lowe. Thanks to them. Thanks for everybody who tuned in. So many people tuned in tonight. It's too many to kind of go through, but thank you for tuning in and commenting. We had tons and tons of comments and engagement tonight. I appreciate that. I want to remind everybody, if you're watching and you are not a member of the SCEA, we'd like to invite you into our movement. And you can do that at jointhescea.org. That's jointhescea.org. Just look at the bottom of your screen right now, or if you're on your cell phone, you can text the word join to 48744 and become a part of the movement that is rallying around our educators, not only around contracts, but around compensation, about working conditions. We are the only professional association that is a union, and we believe in the power of union. We believe we're very proud of our association with the National Education Association, the largest labor union in the United States. And you can be a part of the NEA, the SCEA, and your local association when you join us. And we invite you to do that and to use your voice and to help us lead and organize in your area at your work site. I want to remind everybody, this Thursday we will have another session. Ties in really well tonight with the content for tonight. Our very own Albert Jones, the talented and amazing Albert Jones, will be talking about your voice, our power, advocacy, and education. That's going to be Thursday night from 7 to 8 o'clock. Wherever you're watching now, it'll be available there. We are streaming now on multiple Facebook pages, and also on the SCEA's YouTube channel and the SCEA's Twitter channel. And on Cool's Facebook and Cool's Twitter channel as well. So please tune into that, and we'd love for your comments and questions as Albert talks to us about advocacy on Thursday evening. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. I want to thank again Kat Lowe and Sherry East for being a part of tonight's live stream, and thank you for all you do for the students of South Carolina. We are going to work hard together to improve the schools that you go into every day, because you deserve amazing schools, and your working conditions, our students' learning conditions, and our educators and our students deserve nothing but the best, and we wish you the best. So have a great evening, and we'll see you Thursday night. Bye-bye.